class, welcome to environmental science. I do apologize. I had Blackboard issues this morning and it did not record it, and my PowerPoint, I couldn't even load it, so there were issues. So I decided to record it in a recording so that you know what to do for today. Okay, so let's take a look here. So our objectives for, well, first of all, this is on Chapter 11, Section 2, and I just picked out a small portion of it. You still need to read and do your guided notes, but this is just one particular segment of what's in your reading. Your objective for today is to be able to describe how dams and water diversion projects are used to manage freshwater resources. And we're really going to look at dams in particular, not other water diversion techniques. And we'll also look at desalination. So those two things. We want to also be able to identify 5 ways that water can be conserved. So 5 ways that you can conserve water yourself. So people often prefer to live in areas where the natural distribution of surface water is inadequate for them to survive. And some of those places are like here in Arizona, Phoenix area. It used to be that there was the Colorado River would flow through and it would flood in the area during different times of the year. So crops could get watered, but during the heat of the summer, things would dry up and people wouldn't be able to survive without the water diversion program. So water management projects such as Hoover Dam, pictured here, are designed to meet population's needs for fresh water. And so they bring, the goals really of these diversion projects are to bring water to those dry areas to make them habitable, creates a reservoir for drinking water, and generating electrical power for us. The hydroelectric dams do that. All of these can help people to live and grow crops in desert areas like here in Arizona. So dams can help us by providing these resources for us and also a recreational area. So it does give us a lot of resources. So water diversion projects are used to supply those dry regions with water by using all or part of a river, and part of a river can be diverted. Sometimes we see all of the river being diverted into canals or pipes that carry water across a great distance. Part of the water in the Phoenix metro area actually is in pipes now. Tempe Lake is still open, and but the majority of it is all underground. Part of the water that runs through the Phoenix metro area comes from the Colorado, and before it gets to us in the at Parker Dam, a lot of it is diverted. So we see a huge portion of that water being diverted to Los Angeles through a pipeline. It carries it over there. So if you see here, right here at Parker Dam, it flows over to Los Angeles to help them because they have a large population with growing needs and they're not able to meet the needs of their citizens, and so they've bought the water rights from the Colorado River. Colorado River actually begins as a glacial stream in the Rocky Mountains, and it quickly grows larger as other streams feed into it. And as the river flows south, it is divided to meet the needs of 7 different states. So much of the river's water is diverted for irrigation and drinking water that the river runs dry before it reaches the Gulf of California. So there's parts of Mexico that used to have water before we started diverting the water that has no water now. So I want you to spend a couple minutes thinking about how diverting the water can impact the environment south of where it's diverted. So in this case, the water from the Colorado, everything south of there is being impacted along the river because it's not getting as much water. So what can happen to the environment? What happens to the population that lives down here in the Baja California area that is dependent on, or used to be dependent on, that water? What do you think is happening to that area? Maybe like desertification because there's no water going there anymore. People can't grow crops. They had to relocate. Plants are dying, so then we lose the soil. So all kinds of things like that can happen. So a dam is a structure that is built across the river to control a river's flow. And a reservoir is an artificial body of water that usually forms behind a dam. Water from a reservoir can be used for flood control, drinking water, irrigation, recreation, and industry. Hydroelectric dams use the power of flowing water to turn a turbine, here pictured on the right, that generates, well, it converts the movement of the water to actual electrical energy. And about 20% of the world's electrical energy is generated using this method. And it's considered a very clean source and efficient. Water conservation is really important when we're talking about fresh water. We have so much water on the earth, but a very small percentage of it is actually drinkable. And so as water sources become depleted, as our population increases, water can become more expensive. And there's an actual math connection to this, and it's an inverse to each other. So as water sources decrease, water becomes more expensive. So the cost of water increases. And this is because wells must be dug deeper, water must be piped greater distances, and polluted water must be cleaned up before it can be used. So we see the inverse. Depleted water resources cause the cost of the water to rise. So water conservation is one way that we can help ensure that everyone will have enough water at a reasonable price. And that starts with us, but it's also in the way that we vote. So things that we vote on, or if we request a bill being put in, or we talk to our congressmen or our senators or our House of Representatives within the state, local government, things like that, industry, we as citizens have influence over what happens with fresh water. Now, people will go and buy up the water. This is the water rights. And so if you have water rights on property, this is really good. It's expensive and hard to get, but in the future, as populations grow, the water rights are going to become more and more important. So water conservation in agriculture is really important. Most agricultural water loss comes from evaporation, seepage, and runoff. And we see this a lot here in Arizona. If we use a sprinkler, it can evaporate because it gets so hot here. So finding cheap technology to help with this problem can go a long way towards conserving water. An example of conserving that water is using a really well thought out drip system that only delivers water in the specific place that it needs it at the right time to lower the evaporation from that water. Our industry today uses different technologies to recycle water. They usually have a water treatment plant. So It involves recycling of cooling water and wastewater instead of discharging used water into a nearby river. So businesses often recycle water and use it again. And in an innovative program in Denver, they actually pay small businesses to introduce water conservation measures. And this not only saves money for the city and makes the business for the city and the business, but it also makes more water available for agricultural and residential use. So in our homes, there are things that we can do to conserve water. One example is the toilet, the ULV toilet. It uses less water to flush, so it's a low water toilet. People can conserve water by changing a few everyday habits by using only the water that they need. So water saving technology like the toilet, the low flow toilets can really help reduce household water use. To conserve water, many people water their lawns at night to reduce the amount of evaporation. Another way people conserve water outside the home is xeriscaping, or designing a landscape that requires minimal water use. Here are some of the other things that we can do in our own homes to decrease the amount of water. We can take shorter showers. We can turn off the water while we're brushing our teeth or washing our hands. We can fill up the sink with water and plug it up so that we don't use a whole bunch of water. We can have a low flow shower head. We can use shut-off nozzles. This one I didn't know was putting an aerator on your faucet. It adds air into it, but it makes it to where you don't use as much water. So that helps as well. So those are just a few ideas. Solutions for the future. In some places, conservation alone is just not enough to prevent water shortages. And as our population grows, other sources of fresh water need to be developed. Two possible solutions are desalination and transporting fresh water. So we spoke about transporting fresh water using icebergs on Friday or Thursday. But another thing that we can do is called desalination, and that's where you take ocean water and you heat it up, and the evaporation from that becomes condensation, and we collect it and you can drink that. Big naval ships use this process, actually, this desalination process. So the desalination is the process of removing salt from ocean water. And some countries in drier parts of the world, such as the Middle East, have actually built desalination plants to provide fresh water. And most of these plants heat salt water and collect the fresh water that evaporates, specifically for drinking water. However, desalination consumes a lot of energy, and the process is too expensive for many nations to consider. I have seen some ideas on using the ocean currents to produce the energy for these desalination plants. And so that's a green way of, a renewable way and clean way to do this desalination process. We may see more of that off the coast of California to help the citizens of California with their water shortage. So what I'd like you to do is compare the pros and cons, be able to compare the pros and cons of the dams and the desalination process. So remember, dams fill up an area, so I want you to think about what can happen to the environment when you dam up an area. What happens below it to the environment? What happens under the water that fills up the dam to that, that ecosystem there? And Like we talked about Mexico, what happens there. But talk about the pros, so things that are good about it and things that are bad. Same thing with desalination. What's good and what's bad. So participation points are what can you do in your own home to conserve water? So you'll need to think about that and come up with some ideas and put that in, submit that under the participation points assignment for today, which is the 8th. So November 8th, 11/8. Then you'll see that in the assignment link. So if you go to Tools, Assignments, you should be able to see the one that says Chapter 11, Water Conservation 11-8, and that's the participation points for today's lesson. So if you did not attend today's class lesson, then you can, through this video, you can turn your participation points in. If you need help on anything, please stop into Science Help. I have tons of emails right now. I'm really behind on them. And so just to make or help you get the question answered faster, you can either put it in, raise your hand, maybe another person in the class can answer it, or if it has to do with the gradebook assignment or anything like that, stop into Science Help so that I can answer it. If you work during the day, just note that it's going to take me a few days to get through those emails because I have tons. And that is it. Have a great day, and I will see you in class on Thursday.